The fluorescent lights hummed above the conference table as Jet paced the room like he owned it. Because he did. I sat at the far end, laptop open, my notes on the Pemberton account spread before me. I had managed that client for 10 years. I knew their numbers better than my own phone number. Jet stopped mid-sentence during his so-called brainstorming session. He had been throwing out ideas that made no sense, insulting people and calling it leadership. I corrected a small detail about the client's quarterly projections. Gently, professionally, the way I had done 1,000 times before. He turned slowly. His eyes found mine. A smirk crawled across his face. "Monica, you really don't keep up anymore, do you?" He shook his head like I was a child who had disappointed him. "You're too old for this pace. Honestly, you're getting pathetic." The room went silent. Nobody looked at me. Someone pretended to type. I felt heat rise in my cheeks like I had been slapped in front of strangers. My throat tightened. I thought I might cry. But I didn't. I closed my laptop carefully, like I was sealing something important. As he walked out laughing with Kelsey, I made a decision. I was done, and I would plan his downfall quietly. I locked myself in the bathroom stall and let my hands shake. The tiles were cold. The air smelled like cheap soap and recycled stress. My phone buzzed over and over. A Slack message from Renee. "Are you okay?" That was completely out of line. A text from Darnell. "He's been gunning for you for months. Watch your back." I scrolled through my inbox with trembling fingers. That's when I saw it. An email thread I had been accidentally copied on. The subject line made my stomach drop. Succession plan, marketing director role. It was between Jet and HR. He described me as struggling with the demands of a fast-paced environment. He suggested I should consider retirement in the next 6 to 12 months. He painted me as someone fading away. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. I wasn't struggling. I was still carrying this department on my back. Every campaign, every crisis, every late night belonged to me. But he was building a paper trail, a story where I was the problem. I sat there on that cold toilet seat, legs going numb, and a new thought surfaced. If he was documenting me, I would start documenting him. I took screenshots, forwarded them to my personal email, created a folder called Insurance. The game had just changed. On the drive home, I replayed my career like a highlight reel. 25 years at this company. I remembered the early days when the office had folding chairs and the coffee tasted like burnt water. I stayed until midnight, more times than I could count. Takeout boxes piled on my desk like trophies of sacrifice. I missed my niece's first birthday because of a product launch. I canceled vacations. I came back from sick days early. I gave everything I had. And through it all, Jet climbed. Every promotion he received had my work hiding quietly behind it. I trained the interns who later outranked me. I fixed presentations 30 minutes before pitches while he rehearsed his visionary speeches in the mirror. I never complained. I believed loyalty meant something. But now, sitting in traffic with his words echoing in my head, I understood the truth. I didn't just work for this company. I helped build it. I was there when we had nothing. I was there when we became something. And in one public insult, he tried to rewrite me as dead weight. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I would not let him control the story of who I was. Not after everything I had given. Not after 25 years. This was my legacy, and I would fight for it. I thought back to the first time I met Kelsey. It was a Friday happy hour almost a year ago. The office was loud with weekend energy. Jet walked in with her on his arm like she was a prize. "Everyone, meet Kelsey," he announced. "She's consulting with us to get a feel for our culture." She smiled wide, the kind of smile that looked rehearsed for cameras. Her handshake was limp. Her resume was non-existent. When I asked about her background, she waved her hand and said, "I've grown a few personal brands online." I tried to be kind. I walked her through our campaigns, explained our client expectations, showed her how complex B2B marketing really was. She nodded along, half listening, scrolling on her phone beneath the table. That night, I walked past Jet's office. The door was slightly open. I heard them laughing behind it. The sound felt wrong somehow. 2 weeks later, she was announced as head of social strategy. Her salary matched mine. No experience, no history with the company, no scars from years of grinding. I told myself she was temporary, a phase, a mistake that would correct itself. I was wrong. She wasn't temporary. She was the beginning of my ending, or so Jet thought. The signs had been there all along. I just hadn't wanted to see them. My long-term account started getting reassigned to Kelsey. Just temporarily, Jet said, for a fresh perspective. Important meetings were moved to times I couldn't attend. My name disappeared from presentation decks I had created from scratch. When I asked questions, Jet smiled that patient smile of his. Relax, Monica. We're evolving. Don't take it personally. But it was personal. Everything about it was personal. In the team Slack channel, Kelsey's name appeared everywhere. She got praised for ideas I had floated in private meetings weeks earlier. My contributions vanished into thin air while she collected credit like coins. I scrolled through message after message, watching myself get erased in real time. Then Renee sent me a screenshot, a private message from Kelsey to a friend. The words hit me like a punch. He says he'll open up the director seat once the old guard steps aside. Old guard. That was me. I sat in my car that night, parked in my own driveway, unable to move. The engine was off. The silence was heavy. They weren't just sidelining me. They were planning my removal. And they thought I would never see it coming. My annual performance review arrived like a scheduled execution. I walked into the glass conference room with my notebook, prepared as always. But the tone was wrong from the first minute. Jet leaned back in his chair. He called my work solid but not adaptable. He said I resisted change. He brought up 3 small errors from months ago. Errors I had already caught and fixed myself. He slid a printed review across the table. The ratings were brutal. Meets expectations instead of exceeds. Vague phrases like, may need additional support as company grows. I knew this game. He was building a documented case against me. Then came the gut punch. Given where you are in your career, he said slowly, maybe it's time to think about what you really want. My stomach dropped. This wasn't feedback. This was framing. I didn't argue. I asked calmly if I could keep a copy of the review. He hesitated, then agreed. As I stood to leave, I saw another document partially hidden under his laptop. A different name at the top. Hart Kelsey, promotion recommendation. I walked out with my face calm and my heart racing. He had already chosen my replacement. Now I needed to choose my own future. That night, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by 25 years of work. I pulled out an old external hard drive and started organizing everything. Emails, campaign archives, client testimonials, performance records that told a very different story than Jet's review. I forwarded key email threads to my personal account. I created a spreadsheet with dates, incidents, and witnesses. Every time Jet made an age-related comment, I wrote it down. At work, I started leaving my phone on during meetings. Voice memos recorded quietly in my pocket. I saved Slack messages where he called me behind the curve. I documented his jokes about digital natives versus dinosaurs. It felt paranoid. It felt desperate. But it also felt like the only control I still had. One night, while searching my inbox, I found something that stopped my breath. An email chain where Jet told HR that bringing in younger leadership would re-energize the brand. My name was specifically linked to transition planning. There it was, in writing, the proof that this wasn't about performance. It was about age. And he had been foolish enough to put it in words. I saved everything, backed it up twice. My insurance folder was getting thick. The Pemberton campaign review was supposed to be my moment. I had managed their account for a decade. I knew every detail, every preference, every unspoken expectation. But at the last minute, Jet announced that Kelsey would lead the presentation. To show our modern direction, he explained. I would attend just in case. The pitch was a disaster. Kelsey mispronounced the client's product name. She used market statistics that were 2 years outdated. Worst of all, she accidentally showed a slide with confidential data that should never have been in the deck. The client's VP went stone-faced. I stepped in smoothly. I redirected the conversation, answered their technical questions, pulled up correct numbers from memory. I saved the meeting with pure instinct and experience. When we returned to the office, Jet gathered the team. Huge win, everyone, he announced. Amazing job, Kelsey. That's the energy I'm talking about. He never mentioned my name. Not once. As people scattered, the client's VP caught my arm in the hallway. Monica, she said quietly, if you ever go independent, call me first. I nodded, heart pounding. That was the first time I realized I had options outside these walls. The following week, my phone buzzed with a link from a coworker. Instagram. Jet had proposed to Kelsey. The photos showed everything: the ring, the sunset, the carefully posed smiles. His caption read, "Can't wait to build the future with you." Comments from coworkers flooded the post. Hearts, congratulations, emojis that made my stomach turn. Suddenly his future planning comments made perfect sense. He wasn't just giving Kelsey a job. He was building an empire for both of them. Rumors spread through the office like fire. Word was he planned to create a new VP of brand innovation role. That position would sit directly above mine, and everyone knew who would fill it. He didn't want my experience. He wanted my chair. I said nothing. I showed up on time. I did my work. I smiled politely when they flashed the engagement ring in the break room. But that night, alone in my apartment, I fell down a rabbit hole online. I searched age discrimination cases. I read about employees who had been pushed out. I bookmarked 3 law firm websites. I wasn't ready to fight yet, but I was preparing for war. Some nights, the fear was heavier than the anger. I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by unpaid bills and a cold cup of coffee. My laptop glowed, with job listings that felt like insults. Entry-level positions, salaries cut in half, roles meant for people just starting out. I thought about my mortgage, my parents who needed help, the retirement fund that wasn't where it should be. I replayed his words in my head. Old and pathetic. Over and over until they stopped sounding like words. Just noise. Just cruelty dressed up as honesty. I cried that night. Ugly, angry tears that left my face swollen and my chest hollow. But somewhere underneath the fear, something else stirred. A quiet rage that refused to die. I had sacrificed 25 years. Birthdays missed, vacations canceled, relationships neglected. All for this company. All for people who now saw me as furniture to be replaced. I said it out loud to my empty kitchen. You did not give 25 years to be thrown away like garbage. I closed the job portal, opened a blank document. At the top I typed 2 words. Olson Consulting. My last name. My future. The first step toward something new. One evening, I stayed late to finish a report. The office was quiet. Most people had gone home. My computer froze, and I wandered toward the IT corner near Jet's office. His door was slightly open. Light spilled into the hallway. Then I heard voices. Once Monica is out, we can restructure, Jet said. Her pension obligations are huge. The board will be thrilled to get that off the books. My heart stopped. We'll call it a mutual separation, he continued. Say she wanted more family time. Everyone loves that narrative. Older employees are expensive. Kelsey laughed. The sound was light and careless. Just don't make me manage her during the transition. I'm not babysitting. Glass clinked. They were celebrating. I stepped back slowly. My hand trembled around the folder I was holding. Every word burned into my memory like a brand. They weren't just pushing me out. They were planning to erase my choice entirely. They would tell the world I left willingly. They would steal even my exit. I walked silently to my desk, opened my notes app, typed out every word I had heard, added the timestamp. My insurance folder had just received its most valuable document. They had no idea I was listening, and they had no idea what was coming. I replayed the conference room scene in my mind, the moment he called me old and pathetic. But this time, I watched it differently. I noticed how Jet glanced at the HR representative in the corner. I noticed how Kelsey leaned back with that satisfied half-smile. I noticed how nobody intervened, how everyone looked away. This wasn't a slip of temper. This was performance. He wanted witnesses. He wanted documentation of me being difficult when I reacted. But I hadn't reacted, not the way he expected. As his words hung in the air that day, I felt humiliation wash over me. But underneath it, clarity emerged. I looked around that table at the faces, some uncomfortable, some entertained, some simply afraid. I realized how many people had accepted that this was just how Jet is. How many had normalized cruelty because fighting back felt too risky. The only person who could change my story was me. When the meeting ended and people scattered, I didn't return to my desk. I walked straight to HR. I sat down across from the woman with the fake sympathetic smile and said calmly, I would like to formally document what was said in that meeting. Her smile flickered. Just for a moment. The documentation war had officially begun. The HR office smelled like artificial freshness. the kind of scent designed to hide stress and bad news. The woman across from me smiled with practiced sympathy. "We value your contributions, Monica," she said. "Jet can be blunt sometimes. I'm sure he didn't mean anything by it." I watched her write softened versions of my words. Felt uncomfortable instead of publicly humiliated. Miscommunication instead of discrimination. When I mentioned the pattern of age-related comments in the succession email trail, her pen stopped. "Let's not jump to legal terms," she said carefully. "I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding." I reached into my bag and slid printed copies across her desk. Emails where Jet discussed transitioning out older employees. Messages calling me a dinosaur blocking innovation. Her expression shifted. I stood to leave and paused at the door. "Just so we're clear," I said calmly, "I'll be keeping my own copies of everything, including notes from this conversation." Her smile disappeared completely. As I walked down the hallway, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Power. Not the kind that comes from a title or a corner office, the kind that comes from knowing the truth and having proof. They had underestimated me. That was the first mistake. That night, I did something I had imagined 100 times. I opened my email and typed "resignation, effective immediately" in the subject line. My fingers moved slowly across the keyboard. I wrote about my years of service, my gratitude for opportunities, my decision to pursue new challenges. On the surface, it was polite, professional. Underneath, it was loaded with everything I couldn't say. But I didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, I saved it in drafts and opened my consulting document. I added numbers, real numbers, how much revenue my accounts generated, how many campaigns I had led, how many client relationships I had built from nothing. For the first time, I saw my value in black and white. Not as a favor Jet granted by keeping me around, but as hard evidence of 25 years of excellence. I wasn't dead weight, I was the foundation. He had convinced me I was declining. The numbers told a different story. I closed my laptop and stared at the ceiling. I wouldn't just quit. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of a quiet exit. I would time my departure like a surgical strike. And when I left, they would feel the earthquake. The countdown had begun. The coffee shop was 2 blocks from the office. Quiet. Anonymous. The perfect place for a conversation that could change everything. Ruby Pemberton sat across from me, the VP of our biggest client, the woman who had pulled me aside after Kelsey's disastrous presentation. She stirred her latte and got straight to the point. "Something's wrong at your company," she said. "He's pushing her forward and sidelining you. We've noticed. We don't trust her." My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. I didn't badmouth anyone. I simply said, "I've noticed changes too." She leaned closer. "If you left, would you consider working with us independently?" The question I had been dreaming about and dreading in equal measure. I nodded slowly. "Yes, I would." We agreed to nothing official, no contracts, no promises on paper. But before she left, she slid her business card across the table. "If anything changes," she said, "call me first." I held that card like it was made of gold. As I walked back to the office, the fear began to lift. I wasn't trapped. I wasn't powerless. I was building a landing pad, and when I jumped, someone would be there to catch me. The all-hands meeting had the energy of a funeral dressed up as a celebration. Jet stood at the front of the room beside a slide that read, "Structural Evolution." He talked about embracing the future, about bold new directions. His voice was smooth and confident. Then he introduced Kelsey as our new VP of Brand Innovation, the role that would lead all marketing efforts moving forward. Polite applause scattered through the room. Kelsey beamed like she had won a prize. But Jet wasn't finished. My role, he announced, would be redefined. I would focus on support and knowledge transfer. Translation, I would train the woman taking my job while they figured out how to push me out completely. I sat perfectly still. Inside, I was burning. Outside, I nodded calmly. After the meeting, I walked to an empty conference room, closed the door, pulled out my phone. I opened my email drafts and found the resignation letter I had written days ago. I changed the effective date to something very specific, the day before Pemberton's annual contract renewal. Then I pressed send. The room was silent. My heart was pounding. The countdown had reached 0, and Jet had no idea what was coming. Word spread faster than I expected. My resignation email hit inboxes and suddenly my phone exploded. Renee messaged immediately. If you're leaving, I don't want to stay either. Darnell texted, I've been interviewing already. Tell me where you land. People stopped by my desk throughout the day. Some looked teary, some looked angry. All of them asked the same thing. Is this really happening? I didn't recruit anyone. I didn't ask anyone to follow. I simply said the truth. I'm starting something on my own. There may be room. That was all it took. Within 48 hours, 3 of the department's top performers submitted their own resignations. Renee, Darnell, Bridget, the people who actually made things work. Jet stormed into my office, face red with fury. You're poaching my team, he accused. I looked at him calmly. Everyone has the right to choose where they work, Jet. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Pemberton's name flashed across it. He sent it to voicemail. Big mistake. The dominoes were already falling, and he had just ignored the most important one. Pemberton demanded an emergency meeting. Jet tried to schedule it with just himself and Kelsey, but the client's VP insisted that I be present. When Jet explained I had resigned, she didn't blink. Then we need to discuss what that means for our partnership. The conference room felt smaller than usual. Jet sat rigid. Kelsey looked nervous for the first time. Ruby spoke directly. We have tolerated mistakes because Monica was always there to fix them. Without her, we have no confidence in this account's stability. Jet's jaw tightened. He tried to offer me a consulting role. Working under Kelsey, I declined politely. Then came the words that changed everything. We're prepared to move our contract, Ruby said, to whatever company Monica joins next. The silence was deafening. Jet's face went pale. Kelsey stared at the table like it might swallow her. I kept my expression neutral, but inside fireworks exploded. 25 years, one insult. And now the biggest client was following me out the door. The empire he built on my work was crumbling, and I hadn't even started fighting yet. The email arrived the next morning, official, formal. Devastating. Pemberton was placing their contract under review. The message cited concerns about leadership changes and the loss of essential institutional knowledge. That was me. I was the institutional knowledge. They also referenced unprofessional behavior witnessed in past meetings. Jet's insults had not gone unnoticed. I printed the email, read it twice, let the words sink in. Jet tried to spin it as a negotiation tactic, but the board didn't see it that way. For the first time, his position was threatened. Not by my complaints, by lost money. Money talks louder than justice. I had learned that lesson long ago. I forwarded the email to my personal account, then to a new inbox I had created under my future company name. Olson Consulting was becoming real. That afternoon, I made one more move. I called the law firm I had bookmarked weeks earlier. I'd like to schedule a consultation, I said. I have documentation of potential age discrimination and retaliation. The voice on the other end didn't hesitate. We can see you tomorrow. I hung up and smiled for the first time in weeks. The leverage was building, and I was just getting started. The lawyer's office had old carpet and kind eyes. I spread everything across her desk, the emails, the performance review, the overheard conversation, the reorg announcement, the client's concerns. She listened without interrupting, made notes, asked pointed questions. When I finished, she looked at me directly. You have a strong case for age discrimination, she said. The pattern is clear, the language is documented, and with that client email supporting your credibility, you have real leverage. She explained my options. A formal complaint, a negotiated settlement, a quiet exit that still held him accountable. Then she suggested something I hadn't considered. The board might not know everything, she said. Sometimes copying them on one carefully chosen email forces action faster than any lawsuit. I left her office with a plan, a timeline, a sense of power I hadn't felt in years. For 25 years, I had trusted the system to protect me. I had believed that hard work would be enough. Now I understood the truth. The system protects itself. But I had learned to play the game, and I was holding better cards than Jet ever imagined. I composed the email carefully, every word measured, every attachment selected for maximum impact. It was addressed to HR, a formal summary of my concerns, quotes, dates, decisions, patterns. But at the bottom, I added one small detail that changed everything. CC, Board of Directors. I pressed send and watched the message disappear into the digital void. Within 24 hours, the company transformed. The board called for an internal review. They requested access to my documentation. Suddenly, Jet's untouchable status evaporated. He paced the hallways with a tight jaw, snapped at assistants, canceled meetings without explanation. In the break room, someone slipped me their phone. A screenshot of a message from Kelsey to a friend. "Why is everyone being so dramatic? He's just cleaning out dead wood so we can run this place our way." Dead wood. That's what she called 25 years of dedication. I added the screenshot to my file. The board was watching now. The lawyers were circling. The clients were fleeing. Jet had called me old and pathetic. He was about to learn what pathetic really looked like. Desperation makes people dangerous. Jet proved that in his final move. He accused me of soliciting clients while still employed, of poaching staff for my new venture, of violating my contract. HR called me in again. The tone was different this time. Aggressive, coached. I was ready. I showed them Ruby's unsolicited message offering to follow me. Timestamps proved I spoke to colleagues only after my resignation was submitted. I showed them Jet's emails promising Kelsey power before my role was even redefined. I laid out the entire pattern, calm, clinical, undeniable. The HR representative's expression shifted, from confrontational to concerned, from defensive to calculating. I gathered my documents and stood to leave. In the hallway, I heard voices behind the closed door. "We need to protect the company from him," someone said quietly. "Not her." I smiled and kept walking. The narrative had finally shifted. The story Jet had been writing for months was being rewritten. And for the first time, I wasn't the villain. I was the one holding the pen. The end came faster than anyone expected. An emergency board meeting was called. Executives flew in from other offices. Doors closed. Blinds were drawn. The building hummed with tension. I didn't attend. I wasn't invited. But I felt the earthquake from my desk. By afternoon, an email arrived in everyone's inbox. Organizational leadership update. Jet was stepping down immediately. His departure was pending the outcome of a formal review into conduct and leadership practices. Kelsey's position was suspended during the transition. The board thanked employees for bringing concerns forward and committed to reviewing policies on discrimination and workplace culture. I sat at my desk while chaos swirled around me. Through the glass walls, I watched Jet pack his things into a cardboard box. Framed photos. Award plaques. The little trophies of a career built on other people's work. He walked past my desk without looking at me. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. After 25 years of giving everything to this company, I had finally received something in return. Justice. Not perfect, not complete, but enough. The new office was small, sunlit, imperfect in the most beautiful ways. Mismatched chairs surrounded a second-hand conference table. The coffee machine was cheap but somehow tasted better than anything from the old building. On the wall hung a simple printed sign, Olson Consulting. Renee sat at one desk on a call with a new client. Darnell sketched strategy on a whiteboard. Bridget typed away at an email, laughing at something someone said. Pemberton had signed with us officially. Their contract alone would keep the lights on for years. Other clients followed quietly, drawn to the place where they had always felt heard. I looked around at this tiny space and felt something unfamiliar. Pride that wasn't attached to someone else's name. Success that belonged to me. We weren't a corporation. We weren't impressive on paper. We were 4 people who had chosen each other over comfort. My phone buzzed with a notification. An industry newsletter. The headline made my heart stutter. Jet's old company had been acquired at a steep discount. The leadership scandal had damaged their reputation beyond repair. I set down the phone and smiled. The view from my small window was nothing special, but it was mine. Months later, I attended an industry conference at a downtown hotel. The room buzzed with familiar faces and new opportunities. I heard whispers about Jet's old company, the acquisition, the cleanup, the executives who had quietly disappeared. In the lobby, I saw him. He looked smaller somehow, older. His suit didn't fit quite right anymore. He spotted me and hesitated. For a moment, I thought he might walk away. But he approached. His eyes landed on my badge, my company name. "So," he said with a tight, awkward smile, "looks like things worked out for you." I met his gaze steadily. "They did," I replied. "Calling me old and pathetic was the best thing you ever did for me." He had no response. He just nodded and walked away. That night, I sat at my kitchen table. The same table where I had cried months ago. But everything else was different. My inbox was full of client messages. My team's chat was buzzing with ideas. My calendar belonged to me. I realized the real victory wasn't watching him fall. It was reclaiming my own story after 25 years of letting someone else write it. He thought he ended my career with one insult. He was wrong. That was the day his empire began to crumble, and the day my real life finally started.